Let's start. I probably am going to lecture. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of pictures, okay? They have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. And it's basically have to do with what I've been doing since I can think. Anyway, thanks so much for being here. I'd like to introduce a few folks, a few members of my family that are here today. My cousin Judy Nelson Goodwin and her husband John, parents of Barrett Goodwin, class of, it's either 2016 or 2017. Y'all all know Barrett. Terrific. He's off running the Democratic Party in Arkansas. My niece Darby Grace Bernecki. Veronic. Which class are you in?
2005.
2005. And her husband Peter, and my grandnieces, who refer to me as Uncle Danny the Great. Lucinda and Elliot, they're here. They got the purple on. My brother David Grace and his wife Cindy, both class of 1973. My lovely bride Debbie Grace, and my father and mother-in-law JT and Carlina Saunders and Cersei. They're all here with me today. That's really great. Yeah, I've always had a hard time with Peter's last name. I've tried to get him to change it several times. I'd also like to acknowledge my indebtedness to Darwin Payne's Scenographic Imagination, the text I've used for many years for production design class, and of course Henry Kurth, whose teaching notebooks came into my possession and care some years ago for their inspiration and guidance in putting together this last lecture. The idea of a last lecture is a bit daunting and has such a finality to it. It seems like everything I've been doing leading up to retirement has started with last. Last design, last opening, last strike, last words, last lunch at the cab, still to come. And I need to organize Danny's last lunch. Last hurrah, last waltz, last picture show, last waltz. It's kind of funny because I've always been very insistent on always starting at the beginning of a thing. My parents, you just saw a picture of them, W.A. and Celine, raised me to always be first. So last, that's new territory for me. I decided to spend these last few minutes talking to you about what I've been trying to figure out and to do in the classroom these last 39 years. The last 34 at Hendrix, and maybe a few more things. I was very fortunate to have received, and I hope made the most of my Hendrix liberal arts education. Back in those days, we did declare majors. No minors were necessary. But my degree from Hendrix reads Bachelor in Liberal Arts. With the help and encouragement of my theater faculty mentors, Dr. Rosemary Hindenburg and Professor Frank Rowland, I found myself in Cleveland, Ohio, at Case Western Reserve University, working directly with legendary designer and teacher Henry Kurth. Ming Cho Lee, the great American designer and longtime chair of Yale Drama, has said, teaching forces a teacher to always go through a process of self-evaluation. I always remember that I owe to other people who were my mentors. I would never have survived those 3 years with Henry if I had not had my Hendrix liberal arts background to build on, and Rosemary and Frank always there to help and guide me, and at times convince me. Henry didn't hold a college degree, but he was the most learned individual that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. I was fortunate to be instructed in my formative years, and I imagine a lot of folks here would say ever since, by individuals who understood that a successful theater practitioner was an educated person. I remember Henry gave us a quiz my first day in Design 1. Yes, we have exams in theater arts. Basically, are you familiar with these people, places, etc.? Gertrude Stein, the Bauhaus, Carl Jung, Adolf Appia, Wagner, Bayreuth, Gordon Craig, Isadora Duncan, Martha Graham, Noguchi, Eisenstein, Joseph Urban, Brecht, the Vivianas, Indigo Jones, Matisse, Cezanne, and of course, the most important, Picasso. A page or so. I wasn't familiar with all of them, but a passable number. That's terrifying. I can't say the same for the other two members of my class. And it showed in their work over the course of our first semester. They hadn't had the benefit of a liberal arts education and a theater arts major that featured 3 substantial classes, Dr. Hindenburg, in literature and history, plus 2 sections of Shakespeare taught by Dr. Helen. My classmates were soon gone. Seriously, they were gone. I was the only one left. They didn't have the general education that's so essential and indispensable to our work. They represented the narrowing of vision we continue to detect in today's student of theater design, maybe students in general. The increased interest in perfecting technological production practices over the philosophical education of students of design is a difficult problem for the teacher of an undergraduate beginning design class. Computerized lighting, hydraulics, 3D printing, digital multimedia production, LED lighting, virtual reality, all very tempting and attractive to the young mind. But back to, I've always been insistent on starting at the beginning. That was $450 to do the magic. Mostly made out of cardboard. Seriously, it was pretty cool. So I have begun my production design class for many years by posing the question, for what purpose do we work and to what basic philosophy do we turn for guidance? And by posing what I've come to call our ultimate learning goals. This is very simple, and this is all I ever promise any of the students who come into the class. Where do I begin? How do I proceed? And where do I end? I tend to ask a lot of questions and not provide very many answers. Not exactly the whistles and bells of virtual reality and 3D printing, but I strongly feel important to the training of the successful theater student today. It's gonna happen. Oh, I was going. I was in like you.
You're good. There's mine.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling sea. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon. And let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work. What is your hopes that now must deck our kings? Carry them here and there, jumping o'er times, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass. For the which supply, admit me chorus to this history. Who, prologue-like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge. Our play!
Yeah. Technological nightmare going on up here. I've always fought all this. There you go. Thank you, Bobby, and you of course, that's Henry V, William Shakespeare.
That's so
15.
finished.
Oh, it's good. I can't with this. Oh no!
No, the mystery's gone.
The mystery's all gone now. See, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's William Shakespeare, 1599, and that's Kenneth Branagh's 1989 film version. I think it's his best Shakespeare version, with Derek Jacobi doing the prologue. An invocation as well as an apology. And the part of it that I want to talk about and maybe use a little bit today is this whole thing about can this cotton pick hold the vasty fields of France, and the part about, in case David Ebert, he's here. Yeah. And let us ciphers to this great attempt on your imaginary forces work. Frank Rowland. Like any art form, theater is a reflection of ourselves, a mirror. Great theater tells stories of our histories, our culture, and events we live through today, even if placed in far-off lands and times. I have reminded my students that any play presented today, no matter when it was written, must be presented as a contemporary play.
Amen.
If it has any chance of reaching or moving a contemporary audience, it can't be presented as some stuffy period piece. Yet it is to this call on your imaginary forces work from over 400 years ago that has inspired my own approach to my work on the stage, and my hope to inspire the curiosity of my students in the classroom. Traditions and principles allow us to contend with the conventions of our times. It would seem that audiences today expect to watch more and need to hear less. Keena's here. The role of listening has been supplanted by the visual spectacle of today's technologically entrapped society. Gertrude Stein. Probably didn't expect to hear about Gertrude Stein today. American novelist, poet, playwright, and art collector. Fabulous art collector. Once described talking with several American reporters and a photographer. She said, "You know, it's funny that the photographer is the one of the lot of you who looks as if she were intelligent and who is listening." Now, why is that? She said, "You do," she said to the photographer, "you do understand what I'm talking about, don't you?" "Of course I do," she said. "You see, I can listen to what you say because I don't have to remember what you're saying. They can't listen because they've got to remember what you're saying." Stein continued, "I have found that very interesting, and of course it is so." Keena again. "Of course, nobody can listen if they have to remember what they are hearing. That's the trouble with these forms with government in history." It says slow down. Believe what you like about Stein, but I have encouraged my students to listen more and concentrate less on remembering and on playing back, to allow themselves the opportunity to assimilate the material, to learn by osmosis. Don't get caught up in the spectacle of the classroom. The same might be said or hold true for our contemporary audiences. Dr. Hindenburg, action, of course, has always been central to the theatrical experience, but equally important is the place of words. While the Elizabethan stage may have set limits on the technical extravagance available to playgoers, the stage, the playwright said, and the spectator's individual imagination through words knew no limits. During the past 400 years, imagination on the part of the audience has largely been replaced by actual pictorial scenery made possible by the development of highly complex scenic technology. Most audiences no longer accept an active auditory and imaginative responsibility. Scenic designers, theatrical designers today have become professional imaginers, assuming the responsibility of seeing and listening for others. Our students have to be ready to contend with this challenge, to be successful at any level of our industry. Once again, a successful theater practitioner is an educated person. But back to, what is this philosophy, this philosophical basis for the art I practice? Is production design an art? A better question might be, is production design for the theater even necessary? It's a better question because I think I can answer that one. Its ubiquitous existence is supported by the fact that never have there been more designers at work, never so many projects to engage them, and yes, never so many aspiring students to take their place or take a place beside those still working. There has to be somebody to wrangle all this technology and extravagance and put it in its proper place. There's Bobby. And there needs to be teachers and mentors to instill in these students the traditions and principles that are the foundation of the work. But still, Maybe the theater would be better off without designers, without scenic practices and technical innovation. Maybe theater might return to those days when the audience did take an active role in creating the magic. Maybe we might remember Buckminster Fuller's credo, less is more. Now, a little sidebar, if you haven't been to Crystal Bridges and visited the Bucky Dome, you need to go as soon as possible, immediately after this lecture. Unbelievable. So back to teaching beginning and aspiring students of design, or students of theater. After all, our program at Hendrix has always taken a generalist approach toward the preparation of our students for future success, and in any field, in medicine, the law, psychology, football, you know, it's good for all. What is the best advice to give those seeking instruction for the present and direction for the future professions that, if recent history is any guide, will be considerably changed sooner if not later? So many questions, and we have so little time. For me, bless her heart, little Elliot and Paul. For me, the answers to any of these questions don't mind trying to figure out or redefine the direction of our complex contemporary theater, but decipher, back to Shakespeare, the needs and nature of present-day theater artists, especially to better understand why this work continues to be so attractive to the imagination of so many. In Hendrix speak, sparking a passion, a vocation, a calling to work that has never in and of itself promised a positive reward, wide acclaim by Dr. Festus, wide acclaim, star stage and screen, or great fortune for one's efforts. How would you like to act up against that? This show, the first dress rehearsal was 6 hours long. It was a great show. Back to art, but let's add the word craft. In the theater, we use these words a lot. Sometimes they can be difficult to distinguish or separate. No art is without its underlying structure of craft that every artist must master. Every successful theater artist must master their craft, or in the case of theater, crafts, drafting, stagecraft, electrics, painting, welding, sewing, upholstery, to name but a few. Sometimes in doing so, making models, drawings, sketches, students may forget that they are just a part of a larger collaborative effort involving the contributions and aesthetic judgments of many others, not theirs alone. The restriction of personal expression can be a rude awakening when confronted for the first, second, third, actually every time. However, this is one of my great run-on sentences, Dr. Hindenburg, as a homage to the Elizabethans. However, this ever-expanding technology and reliance on the professional imaginer allows the well-educated and prepared contemporary designer to amplify the vision of the playwright, director, and actor by bringing their own special vision spanning all the arts in ways those practitioners never envisioned, giving the well-prepared contemporary designer an important interpretive role. Would be very proud of him. I'm a big Marlowe fan. Again, amplifying the important role played by liberal arts-based undergraduate education. Ask any student who has experienced my production design course, and there are many in the audience today, and they will tell you there is far too much material. I was voted most likely faculty to kiss an elephant. That elephant and I have quite a relationship. We do. He thinks this is the only class I'm taking. I can only respond. Design for the theater is an art whose scope is nothing less than the whole world outside the theater. In fact, its subject is also worlds that don't exist, anywhere, at any time. A place where anything can happen and something always does. The mechanical skills of design must be taught, but the emphasis in the classroom must rest more in showing how these mechanical skills serve the higher aims of the theater and drama. Thank you, Darwin Payne, for that. Craft and art are not separate activities with different aims. Each should assist the other to something greater than either one. Each should grow out of the other. So a balance must be found in instruction to help usher young students of design into the theoretical realm the philosophical realm of the profession. James, that's you and Marie right there. Is that you? Okay, you're kind of. The eager student can't wait to start making their sketches, construct models, and working drawings, with little basis to build any conceptual approach to the work. It's kind of like the Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland movie, Babes in Arms. Hey kids, let's put on a show. My uncle's got a barn. What else could you possibly need to do theater? Just a barn. And oh gosh, there's a big old trunk full of costumes that are just right. Holly, that's for you. Only in the movies. The desire to make a strong individual impression more often than not can dwarf the larger goals of the production and the contributions of the other members of the production team. Knowing why is just as important as how. So a balance must be found between craft and art. Playwrights theater series. Academy Award winner Bob Burnett, Bob Phillips. The successful student, you were in there, there's Bobby. The successful student, and there's James, a really great picture of James. The successful student of design must start at the beginning. The successful instructor must formulate assignments and projects that will stimulate the beginning student toward building a firm foundation to grasp the dynamics of visual form, leading to a control of the elements that lead to forming. Basic design as such contains within it the danger of becoming an end in itself, the danger of becoming a self-sufficient art form. Uncontrolled, it can so often lead to a certain empty-headedness. It should above all be the nature of an investigation, that whole cipher thing that was in Henry V. So, we should constantly remind ourselves, and Henry certainly did, that basic design should be an attitude of mind, not a method. A form of inquiry, not a new art form. Not merely an inquiry about marks and structures which appear out of the materials used, but an inquiry about the sources in terms of personal expression. It should not be exclusively abstract or non-figurative, but should produce a rethinking of our attitude about realism. This is particularly valuable for the theater, and it should be a means of making the individual more acutely aware of the expressive resources at their command. That's wrong. That's Anton show business, Rosemary, not all that. Should be a fostering of inquisitiveness. Adolf Appia, folks would call me an Appia designer, an Appia man. The Swiss designer who died in 1928 is considered the father of modern. There's Philip. There you go. The father of modern stagecraft made this statement about the designer's manner of visualization. He said, instead of seeing the design of the space with your eyes, see it with your legs. In other words, visualize the movement being provoked by the space arrangement. The actor has two and only two means of expression to use in communicating to the audience. First, there is the voice through which they show emotion and verbal information. Secondly, they have movement through which they can show mental action. And that's it. The showing of mental action is a considerable part of what goes on in the theater. It is all those things that are not spoken. So seeing is important. An exciting moment in any drama is when an actor says one thing but betrays it by the way in which they move. And of course, that's where design comes in to help enable that moment that's explicitly there from the moment that the audience greets the actor. Martha Graham's father was a doctor, and he said to Martha when she was a young girl, "Martha, don't ever lie to me, because I will know that you are lying by the way in which you move." I'm sure it terrifies. Appia was most emphatic about the theory growing out of the creative effort rather than the other way around, creative out of theory. Early on, he stated, the period of creation preceded the period of theoretical reflection. That order seems to me to have ensured the artistic integrity of my vision of the stage. First I saw, inside myself, but with perfect clarity, the stage space. Then and only then did I reflect theoretically on the value of inappropriateness of what I saw. This is extremely important for any theater artist, and especially for those of us who teach. When a student is crammed full of theory, before they have a chance to express themselves, we run the risk of producing a student at a dead end in the creative process. There you are, Philip. I realized early on in my teaching career how important it was to gently ease all students, whether they were interested in design or not, into the idea of the importance of taking a playful approach to the work. There you go. And there's a lot of work, okay? There's a lot of work. I'm sure there are numerous sayings I have been known to repeat. I think they're called Dannyisms. But one of the ones I believe most has been, if it isn't fun, it isn't worth doing. Oh. I really do believe that. It may not seem that way at times, but I really do. I'm having fun all the time. Students in my production design class don't receive a script to work on until 2 or 3 weeks into the semester. I concentrate on establishing a firm grounding on the general role of the designer in the collaborative process, review the basic audience-stage relationships, and some introductory ideas about the language of space. I have incorporated several playful exercises to promote choice making that utilize just simple 5x8 white index cards, black dots and squares cut from really old construction paper that I have, and that's important, colored strips, scissors, and a glue stick. Fun, but as we say in our department, serious fun. By means of this inquiry, we get into the expressiveness and become super sensitive to the space we are trying to articulate. And we emphasize using the materials we have at hand. You know, it's not about, well, I don't have that, so I can't do it. We got something to work with, we can do it. Everyone has to start somewhere, somehow. Sometimes in the attempt to pull all the elements together, a beginner emphasizes one too much and others too little. There must be eventually the middle ground. Where do I start? How do I proceed? And where do I end? It's also important to note a visual artist has the need to mimic in order to get started in using any medium. To get over the hump to an individual expression, that whole terror of looking at the blank page, you know, to have something to work with and something to work on, it's not such a terrifying moment. It's just a necessary phase to go through. So many of the assignments I have taught over the years have been adaptations of lessons I learned from Henry, or from Dr. Hindenburg, or Frank, that helped me get over the hump. Some examples of the Harry 8 Soundscape project, the index cards mentioned earlier, the Hungerer's Gray Set project, and foremost, Professor Kerr's The Unity Process that's been the centerpiece of the course. All have been designed to intentionally ease the student into an ever-increasing, seemingly to the student anyway, questioning and choice-making that emphasize the ultimate learning goals, and that's fun. All have been designed to allow our students to think of a new solution to artistic problems, rather than to play back information recently encountered, especially not to play like me. All allow a variety of the minimum skills, crafts to move on to the next level. Drafting, scenic drawing, model making, knowledge of stage technology and materials, and understanding of stage forms. Most importantly, and the reason our students have been so successful, should they decide to pursue a career in performing arts, in acting, directing, design, or in any career, is the strong philosophical base and intellectual skills they receive that gives meaning to the more craft-based aspects of the work. Some of those being, and these are right from Darwin Pang's Introduction to Scenographic Imagination. He just put he just put words to the things that I just couldn't say, and I'm just incredibly indebted to Professor Pang. The ability to develop a kind of time vision, an ability to see historical past and other cultures as a living place with living inhabitants, to walk in Christopher Marlowe's shoes in the city of Rome and see that as you read that play. Seeing is not assured by 20/20 or corrected vision. The surface of objects, places, and events can only be penetrated and understood by an active vision and a prepared vision. You're always ready to see it. You're ready to find it. It's there. You just have to be ready for it. To comprehend how space on the stage differs conceptually from space encountered outside the stage. The ability to create stage imagery that supports the purpose of the total production. The development of technical skills that serve the scenic concept of the production rather than to demonstrate the visual virtuosity of an individual. You know, that whole spectrum. It's a lot of work and so little time. Addressing fully the issues we've talked about today is impossible in a one-semester course. For the teacher and student, some solace can be found in the words of Aldous Huxley. Abbreviation is a necessary evil. And the abbreviator's business is to make the best of a job that, though intrinsically bad, is still better than nothing. I love that. I've tried to make the best of it. Yeah. Oh, perfect time. Last fall, my good friend and colleague, Dr. Jay McDaniel, invited the retiring faculty to offer a few remarks at a Friday afternoon discussion. Another terrifying event. Almost as terrifying is the one about what would be the 5 songs you would take to a desert island. We only had 5 songs. This was even worse. Thank you, Jay. Our prompt was to offer a few of our fondest memories about our life at Hendrix, and offer an image of what we hope to see for Hendrix in the future. This is what I came up with. For me, Hendrix has been my life. I've spent 38 of my last, this is when everybody has to crap like Tinkerbell, of my last 63 years, I have spent 38 of my 63 years as a member of the Hendrix community. So most of my memories are intertwined with the college, and I have many, many fond memories, but I only can mention a few. So here's a few. All the great students I've been honored to work with as faculty. 7 or 8 MFAs in design, and that may not sound like many, but from a small place like Hendrix, that's a bunch. 2 Watson Fellowships. 1 focus on the tradition of quilting around the world. Yeah. My grandmother Franks would be so proud. 85 or so main stage productions for the Hendrix Players, 2 world premieres, 29 Murphy directors. My numerous shows with Ann and Rose. This is Murphy show, Ken Ellis. Eating lunch with Allen Ginsberg in the Hendrix cafeteria. He had dressing those peas, corn and carrots. It was fascinating. In all the Murphy programs, I have sponsored or co-sponsored. Some of them been bringing my mentor Henry Kirk to campus 3 times. The Hendrix Murphy Blues Festival, around 80 altogether, and recently teaching a Murphy tutorial on Ibsen's A Doll's House at Hedda Gallery. My work with the late Hendrix Special Events Program, a performing and fine arts program bringing free concerts, free performances, free programs to Hendrix and the greater community. And you've seen some of those. Van Dyke Parks, Lucinda Williams, John Cale, Bill Frisell, Howard Tate, T-Bone Burnett, Sam Phillips, Palabolas, Ballet Hispanico, the North Carolina Dance Theme. Shows that could only have happened at a place like Hendrix. Many of the shows, what we call one-off shows, where these folks came just to Conway, just to play or perform for us, because I convinced them. Arguably, at one time, the finest program of its kind in our region. Don Moore. Just a wonderful guy. All the way back to when I was a student. I wouldn't be standing here if Don had just dropped me from that hole in the ceiling of Staples where the lights hung through back in the day. He could have saved us all a lot of trouble. But Don and I were great friends. He was certainly a mentor. He was a father-like figure to me. We collaborated on shows over in the theater when he was here on The Verge, Metamorphosis, Enchanted April, What's That, a Hat? We just had a great time. KHDA. I began my career as a student in 1973 and will end my career as faculty in 2019 on the air. From 10 watts to the World Wide Web. Pretty good. You've seen the Rockin' Guys at the Rockin' Guys at Earth Day held at Toadsuck Park. We were doing fire engines, and the Conway fire engine came through blaring its horn. It was just unbelievably surreal. It was just a great moment. My appointment as art czar by Dr. Ann's Eye, and working with my good friend Ann Turney, who's here today, to catalog, organize, add to, and rehang the Hendricks Permanent Art Collection for all to enjoy. Establishing the dance minor and securing the dance studio during my tenure as chair, having the opportunity to participate in the first 4 years of TEC with my great friend Dr. J. McDaniels in our Art and Spirit class, to have been a member of what was at one time one of the finest faculties in the country. It's just a few, and you know, these things could only have happened at a place like Hendricks. Hendricks was a place I knew would allow me the opportunity for my best chance to be the best I could be. I knew this from the moment I decided to embark on a career as a designer and eventually educator. My particular background, style, temperament, and skill set has proven, or so I think, to be a good fit for the college. And Hendricks really was the only place I ever wanted to work, here in the Arkansas Rep. I was offered a job at the Arkansas Rep before I came to Hendricks, right after I got out of graduate school. And it was just, it just wasn't going to be a good idea. It would have killed me, and then I would have never gotten Hendricks. And I had to turn it down, and I still regret that, but I'm so happy to have gotten to come to Hendricks when Frank retired from designing in '85. Oh, we're almost there. My hope for the future of Hendricks is that it might get back to a place where individuals like myself, either as a student or faculty, can find a home where they can grow, contribute, and prosper, and become that whole person our motto talks about. It may be surprising, but I am and always have been very traditional in my approach to my work. So my notion of the direction to move in the future would be to build on our traditional commitment to liberal arts and a balanced approach towards strengthening all the areas of the college that have contributed toward that effort to be Hendricks. Darwin Payne closes his note to instructors in the Scenographic Imagination with the following quote on the importance of good teaching by the great American writer and teacher Warren Isley. The uses of a great professor are only partly to give us knowledge. Their real purpose is to take our students beyond knowledge into the transcendental domain of the unknown, the future, and the dream. To expand the limits of human consciousness. In doing this, they are creating the future in the minds of others. It is an awe-inspiring responsibility, and the men and women to whom this task is given should be chosen with all the care of which society is capable. The teacher is genuinely the creator of humanity, the molder of its most precious possession, the mind. There should be no greater honor given by society than permission to teach, just as there can be no greater disaster than to fail at that task. It's been my honor and a privilege, and I hope not a total disaster. And so, at last, from my favorite play and one of my favorite playwrights, and he's always a go-to guy for me, The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This is Act 3, the last few lines. We're all so relieved. All has been resolved and revealed. The three couples will finally be united at last. Jack, Gwendolyn, it's a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me? Gwendolyn, I can, for I am sure that you are sure to change. My own one, Reverend Chasuble to Miss Prism. Letitia embraces her. Miss Prism enthusiastically. Frederick, at last. Algernon, Cecily embraces her. At last. Jack, Gwendolyn embraces her. At last! Lady Bracknell, my nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality. Jack, on the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest. Danny, at last!